Ladies and gentlemen, capital G here, and welcome back. And yeah, it took me a while to get to this point, let me tell you. Wife's out with our daughter, so hey, I've got some quiet-ish time. They're doing a full gut renovation upstairs. So between insurance stuff, between our daughter's new sleeping habits, and that, it's been very difficult to find any sort of opportunity to record. And if I'm going to record at all, we're going to have to deal with pounding. So my apologies on that. But I've been wanting to cover this deck for a while. Omnath, Locus of Creation. The card that wrecked Standard. Who knew that an environment without fetches and without shocks would be the perfect environment for a 4-color creature, red, green, white, and blue. But I guess the triumphs did help that, and there's a lot of green acceleration that can tap for any color, so that's what made Omnath possible in Standard. So what's making Omnath possible here? Well, the fact that we got a 4-mana 4/4. When this enters the battlefield, we get to draw a card, and whenever a land enters the battlefield under our control, the first time we trigger this ability, we gain 4 life. The second time, we actually get 4 mana, a red, a green, a white, and a blue. And if it's the third time, deal 4 damage to each opponent and each planeswalker we don't control. Some pretty powerful stuff, actually. But how are we going to win? We're going to be doing a combination of landfall shenanigans. There is an infinite combo in the deck, although I'm not running a bunch of tutors to find it. And we are going to go wide with tokens. So it's going to be mostly tokens. We're going to take advantage of the life gain trigger. We're going to take advantage of the free mana. Go from there. So, to wrap us up, only a couple of artifacts. No Soul Ring this time. Just Arcane Signet and Felwar Stone. I figured that Soul Ring was going to be a waste of space in this particular deck. A Well of Lost Dreams is not a waste of space. It's a little old school, but you know what? We play a land, we're gaining 4 life, so we can convert as much of that into card advantage as we'd like. And some people are like, yeah, it's 5 mana for the first card, 6 mana for the second. Our commander gives us free mana just by playing lands. So, yeah, I'm fine with the cost of Will of Lost Dreams. It makes perfect sense to me. Moving on to some of our landfall shenanigans and our creatures. Avenger of Zendikar, of course. Classic finisher. Azusa, Lost But Seeking, lets us play 2 additional lands on each of our turns. And we've got ways to play 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lands a turn easily. Badoka Gardener, another way to bring lands from our hand onto the battlefield just by tapping. We've got a few of these creatures that do this for us, and they provide us an infinite combo, believe it or not. Not so much Badoka Gardener, because if we control 10 or more lands, they flips into Dokai. But then Dokai provides us with some big elemental creatures. XX, where X is the number of lands that we control. Let's flip them over and see that more easily. These old Kamigawa flip cards are a little awkward, but they work. Taking advantage of the life gain trigger, Crested Sunmare. A 5/5 horse that says that other horses we control have indestructible. At the beginning of each of our end steps, if we've gained life, we get a 5/5 horse. That's every end step, by the way, not just ours. So we can actually, using cards such as Badoka Gardener, play lands out of turn, gain life from Omnath, and get a horse. Dryad of the Elysian Grove lets us play additional lands on our turn. Gives our lands every basic type, so we don't ever have to worry about color. Dualcaster Mage. The Dualcaster Mage Ghostly Flicker combo is in the deck. If you're not sure how that works, Ghostly Flicker lets us, well, flicker 2 permanents. One of them being a Dualcaster Mage, another being either Omnath or a land, depending on what needs to be flickered. But this allows us to flicker infinitely. Dualcaster Mage comes back onto the battlefield. Copies Ghostly Flicker. The copy flickers out Dualcaster Mage. Comes back in, copies the original. Goes on and on for as long as we need it to. And it will win us the game. But I don't have any ways of tutoring out this specific combo. It's just in there for the possibility of making it happen. Elvish Reclaimer is here, lets us sacrifice a land to get any land card from our library onto the battlefield tapped. You'll see why this is important soon. Emiria Shepherd lets us recur permanents. This is actually kind of cool. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under our control, we return a non-land permanent card from our graveyard to our hand. If the land we played is a plains, it comes right to the battlefield instead. Geode Rager. This lets us have our opponents attack each other, but not us. Especially if we're playing 2-3 lands every turn, because then we can goad each of our opponents into attacking each other, but never us. Llanowar Scout puts a land card from our hand onto the battlefield. Playing Morag. Here's another way to end the game, if you get the opportunity to do this. It says here that each creature we control gets +1/+0 for each time it has attacked this turn. And it has the landfall ability of whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control. If it's your main phase, there's an additional combat. At the beginning of that combat, untap all creatures you control. So, on our main phase, play 2, 3, 4 lands. We'll have 4 additional attack steps. And if we have our opening, we can take someone clean off the board with that. Marasa Rootgazer. 2/3 Vigilance. It lets us put a basic land from our hand onto the battlefield. Alternatively, it also lets us return a basic land to our hand if we need to use this. Nesting Dragon. Could probably slot this for something else, but I thought it was pretty cool to have some board weight protection, oddly enough. Because what will happen here is that whenever we play a land, we get a 0/2 Dragon Egg. When the egg dies, we get a 2/2 red dragon with Fire Breathing. Fire Breathing being pay red, give the creature +1/+0 until end of turn. So if we've got a bunch of these eggs out and somebody board wipes, well, we've got a bunch of 2/2 flyers. Seems good. Omnath, Locus of Rage. Our 7-mana 2-color Omnath. A very powerful commander in its own right as well. It says that whenever a land enters the battlefield under our control, we get a 5/5 elemental. Whenever this or another elemental dies, deal 3 damage to target creature or player. Very powerful effect. Pilaf, World Sculptor, an elemental, oddly enough, creates plans for each basic land that we control. That's what happens when it comes out onto the battlefield. And then landfall says one of our plants gets 4 +1/+1 counters. Pretty sweet. Rampaging Balefs. Classic card in our format. A 6/6 for 6 with trample that gives us 4/4 beasts every time we put a land into play. Here's a piece of spice. Rien, Angel of Rebirth. We don't see this one too much. It was a box topper for M20. But why I feel this is spicy is that A, it gives our multicolored creatures a +1 bonus to the attack. It also says that whenever another multicolored creature you control dies, such as your Omnath, return it to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. So again, a way to protect it and reduce the amount of tax we have to pay to bring it back into play. Risen Reef. Pardon me if I'm in a bit of a hurry. I have to go to work after this. When this or another elemental comes onto the battlefield under our control, we get to look at the top card of our library, put it onto the battlefield if it's a land. If it's not, we put it in our hand, so good way to draw cards. Steve, of course, we can sack this off our basic land whenever we like. Sakura Tribe Scout, a 1-mana 1/1 that lets us put lands from our hand into play. The obnoxious Scoot Swarm. I vow that this is the only deck I'll put this in, because this is the only deck that really calls for it, but man, this thing gets out of hand way too fast. Selfless Savior, a way to protect our commander, a 1/1 that we can sack this off to give another creature we control indestructible until end of turn. Tatyova. This uncommon has done a lot of work in our format ever since she was printed, and does more work here, letting us draw cards and gain life every time we put a land onto the battlefield. Walking Atlas rounds it out for us here. A colorless creature that lets us put lands from our hand onto the battlefield. Angelic Accord going into enchantments, taking advantage of our life gain. So we play a land, we gain our life from our Omnath, and at the end of turn we get a 4/4 Angel. We've got Burgeoning. Whenever an opponent plays a land, we put a land from our hand onto the battlefield. Exploration lets us play a second land from our hand on each of our turns. Felidar Retreat. This is a card that's had a huge impact on our format as well. Play a land, get a Cat Beast, a 2/2 white Cat Beast. Or we can put a 1/1 counter on each creature we control and grant them Vigilance. Fervor, because haste is awesome for our deck. Griffin Airy. Similar to the Angelic Accord, we only get the Griffins on our turn, which holds it back a little bit, but it's only 2 mana for quite the engine. Intruder Alarm, quite the spice here. As you've previously seen, we have creatures that tap to put a land into play. We have cards that let us get a creature whenever we play a land. Therefore, it's play a land, untap our creatures, get a creature, untap everything. Tap, play a land, untap creatures, so we're going to cycle with that, and you're going to see how this goes infinite for us. Mass Hysteria, another excellent hasty card. All creatures have haste for 1 red mana. This is all players, so this is going to create some chaos. Retreat the Koralheim. Much like Intruder Alarm, whenever a land comes onto the battlefield, we get to tap or untap target creature. And ideally, we'll be untapping one of our creatures that puts lands into the battlefield. Zendikar Roiling, another way to get creatures whenever a land comes down onto the battlefield. And moving on to instants. One of my favorite counterspells, Disdainful Stroke. Easy to splash, only a single blue and any other mana. Counters a spell with converted mana cost 4 or greater, any type. Excellent for holding off board wipes. Dovin's Veto. This can't be countered, and it counters any non-creature spell. Ghostly Flicker, as I've explained, combos with Dual Caster Mage. Harrow. Pay 3 mana, sack 1 land, get 2. Momentary Blink lets us blink ideally our commander to draw some cards and dodge some targeted removal. And it flashes back, so that's also handy. Negate. Counters any non-creature spell for 2 mana, very splashable. Not sure why the promo version comes up, but it's still cool. Roiling Regrowth. That's a sack land. Again, get 2 basic lands. Unlike Harrow, the lands that Roiling Regrowth get us are tapped. So be it. It's still good. Swan Song. 1 blue counters an instant, sorcery, or enchantment. So take advantage of that as we can. 45 lands. Many of them are these Ravnica bounce lands. I was talking about comboing off with our creatures that tap to put a land onto the battlefield. So you get Intruder Alarm or Retreat alongside any card that gives us a creature when it comes onto the battlefield. One of our creatures that tap for a land, and these guys, because these can bounce themselves. They don't have to bounce another land, they can bounce themselves. So that is our plan, is to go infinite in that fashion. So we're running all of them. In the early game, we can leave it on the battlefield and fix our colors that way and wrap that way. Obviously, beware of strip mines because these are juicy targets. Boros Garrison, same deal. Running the pathways. All of the available pathways are in this deck. Command Tower. Of course, we're running 4 colors. We're going to need the Command Tower. There's the Cragtown pathway. Evolving Wilds. Classic. Fabled Passage. Field of the Dead, of course, another way to generate tokens. We have 45 lands in this deck. It is very, very easy to have 7 or more lands with different names. Forest, of course, running 11 forests as our primary color. Grilled Turf, 6 islands. The Izzet Boiler Works, 6 mountains. Another pathway. 6 plains. Reliquary Tower, because we are going to be drawing some cards. The Selesnya Sanctuary, of course. Simic Growth Chamber. Terramorphic Expanse, so all 3 of my typical fetches. I'm not running the $60, $80, and $100 fetches, of course, because, well, I'm not. And lastly, we're running Thriving Grove. This is the only thriving land I'm running here. Green is my primary color. And so the fact that this can choose a second one for me in the early game makes it worth running. I don't think it's worth running all 4 possible thriving lands because I don't see the value in that. But running this one, which gives us our primary color, and any of our secondary colors as we need it, makes perfect sense to me. Sorceries. Balaged Recovery making an appearance here. Being able to regrow a card or play this as a land, excellent. Circuitous Route. We're running all of these 4 mana fetch 2 land effects because hey, we get even if we don't play any other land on our turn, if Omnath is on the table, this pays for itself. We tap for 4, we get 2 lands, gain 4 life, trigger whatever needs to be triggered, and we get our mana back and just move on to play something else. So of course I'm going to run this. Cleansing Wildfire. Excellent common. If one of our opponents is running a super powerful land, we take it out for just 2 mana. And we get our card back. Or, alternatively, we can target one of our lands with it. Go get a basic, trigger Omnath, and draw a card. So, amazing card here. Explosive Vegetation, as is Circuitous Route. Farseek lets us get a Plains, Island, Swamp, or Mountain. Migration Path, again, 4 mana, gets us 2 lands. Undo Inversion, nice little panic button, destroy all non-land permanents. If something's not working, reset the board with this. We'll get to that 8 mana very, very easily in this deck. If we don't need it, we play it as a land. Rapid Growth, again, get a basic, put it onto the battlefield. Vastwood Surge gets us 2 basics. And that brings us to the end of Omnath. So, lots of combo potential here. Lots of synergy with all 3 of his triggers. Mainly the first 2. But every time we trigger that 3rd one, hey, wipe out some Planeswalkers. And I did recently get to play a 4-player game over the table for the first time since, I think, February or March. I forget when the last time I got to play a game in paper was. But finally got a chance to do that last week. And, yeah, Planeswalkers are still popular, let me tell you. I was playing against a mono-red Chandra tribal. It was actually really, really controlling for a mono-red deck. I was also playing against a pretty good Kenrith deck. And I was running also against Krenko. So it was fun to play games with those guys. We were 3 people I had never met before. They were just looking for another player, and I just happened to be free. So we got to play a bunch of games. We played 4 in total. And did manage to win one of my games with Amanatu. Also, Itali had a great showing. My own Kenrith deck underperformed a little bit, although it did keep Krenko in check. And Arabo, I got mana screwed. I had three lands in my hand. I had a couple of creatures and enchantments to start with, and then I never drew a card that cost less than 4 after that. So, but enough about those games. Hope your games are going well. Hope you like my take on Omnath. I'm not quite sure what deck is next for us, but I will be diving directly into Commander Legends. I won't be looking too much into Zendikar at this point. Because it took me so long to get here, to get to this point for showing this deck. I've had this build for about a month ready to record, but I haven't been able to get this to you until now. So for me, the next stop is Commander Legends. I do have a couple of combinations I want to put together, and we'll see if we can make it work. It's going to be a little awkward because I am a huge fan of Jessica. But the 2 commanders that I want to pair it with, it's not as natural a synergy as it should be. And I'll explain that when it happens. But it's going to be Jessica and something, for sure. And there's a couple of solo commanders that have really impressed me just during the spoiler season. So, we'll talk more about that when I get to those decks. In the meantime, stay safe, enjoy the rest of the week, and we'll see you all again next time. Bye for now.